Hello everybody and welcome back to Time of the Whovians United. Today we've got another classic Doctor Who review. It's going to be Season 6 and as always I'm with a special guest. So, would you like to reveal yourself?
I'm Christopher from Dallin Reviews. I review lots of Doctor Who, especially the classic series, and I'm really excited to talk about Doctor Who Season 6 today. Thanks for having me on, Corey.
You're welcome. This is Christopher's. Sorry, this is not Christopher's first time doing a review. He's done a few of us before. So if you've not seen any of the other classic reviews before this one, go and check out all the other ones. Dallin did season number 1. So if you've not seen any of those, go and check them out before these ones. But let's get on with this, shall we? So season number 6, Christopher. Overall, what do you think of this season? Overall.
So I do like Season 6. I think it's a pretty good season of the show, but considering all the 60 seasons, it's easily the weakest one for me. Now, I think the strongest parts of this are really the companions, because the stories, there's just not as many great ones, and there are a number of weak ones that do drag this one down. When you compare it to previous Troughton seasons, and honestly the other 60s seasons, there's just a number of things in here that hold this one back. It doesn't really get particularly good until near the very end, although, of course, Mind Robber is earlier on. And on the whole, yeah, I like it, but when you compare it with all of the great stuff that we've had in the 60s, especially just previously with Season 5, this one, it doesn't hold up as well. And like I said, it is pretty good. There's some really enjoyable stuff in here, but it definitely could have been stronger.
Yeah, I do have to agree with you there, Christopher. For me, yeah, overall it's an okay season, but it's definitely my least favourite so far. Unfortunately, it's got a few good standout stories, and as we'll get on to, I do think the finale is excellent. But as a collection, as a season, it doesn't exactly hold well together. We'll talk about all the other good points later on. But yeah, it's definitely not my favourite one so far. It's okay. It's not terrible. It's no by no means bad, but in terms of comparing to the other seasons, it's definitely my least favourite so far. So, the Doctor, the second Doctor, Christopher, what do you think?
I love Patrick Troughton as the Doctor. I thought he was really good in his first season. He was even better in his second one. And I think he's equally great here. I think he's the standout and really holds his thing together. And in most of the weaker stories than him and the companions whole thing, you're not enjoying the story as much, then he really grounds you and brings something great to it, because he's just such a fresh Doctor and always has this energy and really does a great job of balancing these more comedic and darker aspects, as he's always done. And I just think he's great. I do prefer him even to William Hartnell, who was already a really good Doctor, and he just tries a completely sort of different thing while still staying true to who that character is throughout his whole era. And I think he's great in here and is, for me, easily the standout of this thing.
Yeah, I'm very much the same. For me, the second Doctor is better than William Hartnell by far. Well, I say by far. I do think he's a very, very good Doctor. In season 6, he's still good. He's still very, very good. I think my favourite performances from him do come from season 5, but nevertheless, he is still very, very good in this season. His relationship with Jamie is still stellar. Those two are just, as I say, I talk a lot about this in the season 5 review, but those two are comedic geniuses. They are perfect together. He gets on very well with Zoe as well. He's their friendship is very, very good. So I won't talk too much about him, because I talk more about him in the season 5 review. But yeah, very, very, very good. A top-notch Doctor, but I do think he's better in season 5. But still very, very good. So, the companions, Jamie and Zoe, Christopher. What's your thoughts?
I do like them, particularly Jamie. I mean, he's been the second Doctor's companion since, I mean, his second ever story in the Highlanders. And he's always been enjoyable, but I think that his chemistry, the way that they work together, their dynamic, it just continues to improve. And season 5 is my favorite of Troughton's seasons, but in terms of the dynamic between these two characters, I think they might even be a little bit better in season 6 just because they have had that time to sort of develop and grow closer together. And I just think that these two performers, Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines, are fantastic in their characters as, you know, Jamie and the Doctor. And of course, right now I'm, you know, more so talking about Jamie because, you know, we already talked about the Doctor, but Jamie, he's really good. He's a strong companion. He's one of the best ones that we've had so far in the show. In terms of Zoe, Zoe's a very interesting character. I'm still not entirely sure what I think about her, even having seen all of her stories. I definitely like her in places. I think that conceptually we have these two companions that are from completely different time periods, you know, with definitely a smarter companion that kind of knows what she's doing to a certain extent. I think sometimes she does get left out of the stories a little too much, which does sometimes happen with companions. And I'm still not entirely sure how to feel about her. I think she's just a little bit mixed for me. Sometimes she definitely works well, and the dynamic between these three characters is just great. And then sometimes she's just kind of there and doesn't add very much. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. On the whole, I do like her, but I don't think she was used to her full potential. What about you, Corey?
Well, like I said, with the Doctor, I've spoken enough about Jamie in the season 5 review. He is my favourite companion so far, and I do believe he will always be my favourite companion. Even Ace, as good as she is, I don't think she could knock him off the top spot. But yeah, he is as good as he has ever been, and I think the biggest strength to Jamie is that even though he's out of his time, he takes to everything so well. He is very capable, and he just, even though he doesn't understand anything that is going off, he takes it in his stride, and he can just get into the action, and he, you know, it doesn't faze him. It doesn't faze him at all. He's a great companion who works well, helping the Doctor solve problems, you know, fight the villains, get through the story, and do a lot of problem solving. Just as somebody who has no knowledge or any experience with this sort of thing, him joining the TARDIS team and actually becoming comfortable with this sort of idea is brilliant. And his relationship with the Doctor is as good as it's ever been, if not so more, even better as well. Zoe, I like how Zoe, because she's from the future, she's very capable, she's very smart, you know, intelligent, resourceful. She knows a bit about a few things. She can definitely help the Doctor in the technical department, and that's where her role fits in really, really well. She gets on well with the Doctor and Jamie very well. Their relationship, their friendship is quite a good one, actually, quite a fun one. But I do agree. I do think she needed a bit more time. You know, I feel like if she had another season or she came in a bit earlier, she would have. Yeah, she could have been used to more of her potential. I do feel like, yeah, if she had more time, she could have grown even more. And another point is, she's no damsel in distress. You know, she's no all screaming, "Oh, Doctor, Doctor, come help me!" She's actually quite a strong person, and she very rarely gets herself into trouble or scream at all. She's very, very capable on her own, and she proves that quite often. You know, for example, like in the Seeds of Death. You know, the Doctor's gone up into the space station, and she's there with Jamie trying to fix the rocket, get ready to go. So they're ready to get back to Earth and stuff. And she's just, you know, very good at things like that. The villains, because there's been quite a variety of villains in this season. Are there any that are your favourite, Christopher?
Well, for me, looking at this entire season, the 7 stories, the ones that really do stand out to me, despite their incredibly limited usage, is the Time Lords, who, play as the villains to the Doctor and the companions in the final story of season 6. I think just their brief appearance and the way they're used in the War Games is great, and they work really well for me. I love how mysterious they are and how they just kind of do things, and that's the way it is. There isn't much, even someone like the Doctor, who we've seen encounter all of these different villains and aliens and have to deal with all these incredibly difficult situations and really dangerous people. Even the Doctor isn't really able to stop them. If they want him to go back to Earth and regenerate and send his companions back to where they originally were, that's going to happen. If they want to just fix the situation, that's what's going to happen. And what's really interesting to me about them is that they do seem to be a somewhat moral species, like they're not just doing things that are evil, they're doing things that they think are right. And they are very deliberate with the decisions that they make, so that we see in the final story that there's a situation where some of the companions are in danger because of one of the characters, and the Time Lords very specifically wait until they're able to save that person before dealing with the person who was trying to escape in the final part. And I thought that was really cool, just seeing how they aren't just these evil guys that are going to be evil and do their thing. They're very interesting in the way that they make their decisions and how they aren't really trying to do anything bad, but to the Doctor, this is a horrible thing that they do to him. So yeah, I thought they were really good, even though they were very limited in this entire season. They were just really in that one part, although of course we had a couple in the War Games. But other than that, there really weren't any standouts for me. I liked the Cybermen and their usage, even though they aren't in the invasion all that much. And I think that the Ice Warriors were effective, but I mean, the Space Pirates, nothing really in there in terms of villains, or even the Dominators and the Protons. There's a lot of just very filler, just, villain of the week villains that are completely forgettable. But the Time Lords are absolutely the standout of this season in terms of the villains for me. What do you think, Corey?
Yeah, you know what? I mostly agree. I think the best 60s villains and monsters and villains came before this point. There are a few standout villains or monsters in this season, but in majority, yeah, not very great. So I'd say my favourite has got to be Tobias Thorne, because he's creepy, he's strange, he's weird. He's got that inhuman feel about him. I know he's partially converted by the Cybermen. I'm led to believe, not reading into the Wikipedia and stuff. He's cunning and devious, but the thing is, right, I love how once the Cybermen actually turned on him, he actually, helped the Doctor. He didn't just run away because he lost. No, he actually thought, what, I've lost here, and I feel hard done by. So I'm just gonna fight back. I'm gonna fight back, and obviously, he paid with his death. But again, reading on a bit more, apparently he featured in Big Finish and some other stories and stuff. But for me, Tobias Thorne, very, very good. I do hold him up in the same pedestal with Salamander, because they are very similar but very different. So Salamander is just pure human with with vengeance and stuff, but whereas Tobias Thorne is very inhuman and weird, but he holds a lot of power over people. I feel the Cybermen, the design is great. The design is great. Their appearance at the end of part 4, might have been 4, I think it was 4, when they're coming out of down the stairs, outside of St. Paul's, brilliant. But after that, they were just kind of walking about the streets, and they weren't doing very much, and you didn't even hear them speak. They were kind of they weren't really in control. They were kind of being used. They were being controlled by Tobias Thorne, which is very different. Normally, the groups are in control and they've got their own plan. Where here, they're just walking about and being a bit odd, and they didn't really do very much. I do actually like, though. So, the mind robber. You have the master from the land of fiction, but we find out he's not in control. There's actually some form of unseen aliens that have actually have got the power over this world, and I find them quite cool because they're very ominous but unknown. You know, they're there but you can't see them, but they hold so much power and control, and the whole creativity of this world is actually like it's quite good. I actually find it really, really cool, to be honest. And you know, it's like the great intelligence. You know, you can't see the great intelligence, but they have so much power despite not being able to see them in a bodied form. The Ice Warriors, I do think they were great. I do prefer the actual Ice Warriors story to the Seeds of Death, but I do feel that they were pretty good in the Seeds of Death. They are still threatening and they are still creepy. I found the War Chief in the War Games, you know, pretty good. It was all right. Didn't really have a backbone though. It was all like shouty and threatening, but he never really did anything to, you know, it was all talk really. But I think what made it good was the whole team. The whole team, you got the warlords, and you've got the security chief and the war chief, and then you've got all the individual colonels in all the different war zones. As a collective, I thought that was really, really good. The Time Lords at the end, great, even though they weren't there for very long. Very diplomatic, very, that very first instance, you know, they were a very diplomatic race. They fought through things very, very clearly. Everything has consequences, but they do give you a chance to explain yourself and, you know, give yourself a bit of a chance. And that was really cool. And as well, even though they was putting the Doctor on trial, they still protected the Doctor and the companions to allow them that fair trial. And yeah, I thought that was really good, you know. And it's interesting to see how they evolve from this point onwards, because from here they're like a diplomatic race, and then you get on, and as you get further and further on, they're like old dusty senators, and that's the reference from a particular episode in New Who. But you know what I mean, I feel like the first introduction is pretty cool. And then, you know, you've got the Dominators and the Protons and, you know, the Space Pirates. There's one thing that gets me all the time with the Dominators, and it's that those two Dominators do not work well together. And it's the fact that one of the Dominators keeps doing something and the other one tells him not to, but then he does it again and again and again. You know, the other Dominator tells him to stay by the drill and keep drilling, but as soon as the other lot come along, he's like, let's kill them. And every single time he gets told off for doing that, he does it again. And it's just those two back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know, it's like, come on, mate. You've done the same thing about 10 times now. We actually learn here. And I'm not surprised if a guy is just giving up on you. And then the Crotons are just a bit silly. Their design just a bit, you know. So, but yeah, as I said at the start, there's some standout villains, but overall, as a season, not particularly great. So that being said, then what we'll go on to now is ranking the stories from 1 to 7, and give a rating with a few reasons why. What's your rating, Christopher? Your ranking?
All right, so I'll start at the bottom of this season. The worst story by far is the Space Pirates. I reviewed this one a couple months ago. I think I gave it like a 4.5 out of 10, and people said I was too generous because it's really not good. I mean, this one you spend, and granted, it is missing, but this one you spend just 2.5 hours with really uninteresting characters, not nearly enough of our main characters in it. You just have people going around with really strange and accents that don't feel authentic at all, and none of what's happening here is remotely interesting. This is one of the most boring Doctor Who stories, the Space Pirates. I think at number 6, I would have to put the Crotons. I mean, again, there's very little in this one to like. I think it's definitely much stronger than the Space Pirates. It's okay, you know, there's some kind of interesting ideas about the things going on, but it's also pretty basic. I mean, you've seen these kinds of stories before where there's this civilization and this other group of people, and there's not a ton original to it. And at least our main characters are here, but they don't add enough to really bring this one up. It's definitely another week. It has to be the Dominators. This is, again, more interesting. This is very much a middle of the road story, and it's fine. You know, there's some things to like about it. There's some things to dislike. I think our main characters are good. I think the villains don't work. I think it's too long, but it's all right. You can sit down and watch it, and it's enjoyable. It definitely sort of gets worse as it goes along. But I do think the final part picks up. In fourth place, I think it has to be The Seeds of Death. This one is pretty good. It's a story that gets, as opposed to the last one, better as it goes along. I actually slightly prefer it to the Ice Warriors because I think it just leaves me with more of a distinct kind of unique style than the Ice Warriors. I don't know. I think they're very close in quality, but I just slightly prefer this one to that story. And they work as villains. I think the setting's interesting. I like seeing what all these different companions get up to. I think it's quite good. And next, I would have to put in third place The Invasion. I mean, it's a totally enjoyable, pretty solid story with some things that don't quite work. I know you particularly like Tobias Vaughn. He didn't actually leave much of an impression with me. I know a lot of people quite like him, but he just didn't quite work for me. But I did like how the Cybermen were used. I do think they weren't used enough, and this story is honestly just a bit too long, which is a shame. You can have long stories that do really work, but I feel like this one just doesn't have enough going for it. Maybe if they did more with the Cybermen or more with Tobias Vaughn, I don't know. But it's still really enjoyable and thoroughly entertaining. I think that our main companions really do help this one. In second place, I would put The Mind Robber, which is a good, solid, just really weird story, which I just love seeing how different this one is from the rest of the show. It's hard to imagine, what other episode you would even compare this one to in the 60s. Like, the only thing I can think of is the Celestial Toymaker, which still isn't really what this one is. It's very unique in what it's doing, and I quite like that. And easily the best one in first place is The War Games. That is just a great story. It's by far the standout and really saves this season because it totally ends Patrick Troughton's run as the Doctor on an absolute high, and it's just so good. It does so many different things as you go throughout. It feels like it gives you little nuggets and lets you discover what's going on in this story in a very gradual way, which totally works for me. And I just really, really like that story. It's a fantastic end, not just to this Doctor and to the 60s and to this era, but to his companions as well. I think their exit is quite emotional. And this season on the whole, I would give a 7 out of 10. It is pretty good, completely saved by its ending, and quite mixed throughout the rest of it. There's a lot to like in here, but it definitely could have been stronger, especially when compared to the other two seasons.
Well, it's quite interesting because our lists are almost perfectly the same. Almost the same.
Wow.
There are two that are in a different order. So I'll go through that. So in at number 7 is The Space Pirates. I don't think I stayed awake for that. It was, yeah, absolutely. Right. I feel bad for this one because I feel like if this had been animated or found, I feel like it might do a lot better because it's just audio only. And you've got obviously reconstructions and stuff, but I tend to just listen to the audio. But yeah, I gave it 1 out of 10. I'm trying to get to the point where if I do believe something deserves it, I do try to be positive and try to give a better rating. But no, I'm going to go along with saying it's a 1 out of 10. So in at number 6 is the Dominators. I just feel like, yeah, it's definitely a lot, way too long. The Dominators themselves aren't great. They're just not at all. The Quarks are okay. They're okay, actually. I forgot to mention the Quarks, but they're okay. As a story, it just drags a bit and not very much happens for me. So I gave that a 2. In at number 5 is the Protons, and I gave that a 4 out of 10. Decent concept. Again, just drags a bit, and yeah, I just don't feel it's very very strong. You know, the concepts and the ideas are all right, but the Crotons are just not very threatening, and they're just a bit silly, and they're just a bit. Yeah, yeah, it's just there's a lot of things that could be improved in it, and it just misses a 5. In at number 4 is the Seeds of Death. I gave it an 8.2 out of 10. I do believe that the Ice Warriors is better, but they're both very, very similar. I do like the inclusion of the Ice Warriors and even the commander. I can't remember the name. It's not Commander Azaxak. That's from the Monster of Peladon, Curse of Peladon. One of the two. Yeah. But anyway, very, very good. I do feel like, yeah, it definitely gets better as it goes along, and the ending itself, the final couple of parts is good. The pacing itself, yeah, even though it's a few longer than most, I do feel actually the pacing is pretty well. It just actually hold up, and it builds up at a good pace. I do feel like the pacing is pretty good. In at number 3 is The Invasion. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. As a story, again, the pacing is really good. It builds up really well. The story is great. Tobias Form for me is really good. I know that the Cybermen aren't the best, but they're not terrible. You know, the reveal is great, and they are used. They could be used a lot better, but they are used. And I do like the scenes with Unit when they're fighting. You know, it starts standing off a gunfight with Unit. Those scenes are really, really good. Yeah, I just do feel like a few things could have been improved to make it even better. Then in at number 2 is the Mind Robber. Creativity. This is so, as you said, it is very, very similar to the Celestial Toymaker, but I feel like this is very, very creative and executed very, very well. You know, very well paced, very well developed, very fun, really adventurous. I do like I imagine this is just to give Fraser Hines a holiday, how they actually found a way to replace Fraser Hines. I don't actually know the reason why, but I love the bit where the Doctor had to rearrange, replace Jamie's face to get it back, and he got it wrong, and it wasn't Jamie. And I assume he had a holiday or a reason to be off, and I found that's quite a creative way to keep Jamie in the story without Fraser Hines actually being there. That was really, really good. But in at number 1 has to be the War Games, which is a 10 out of 10. And it's unbelievable that a 10-part story can be paced so well. I feel like this story has a lot of things going off, but there are like spikes throughout the story where key things happen, so it keeps the story rolling. So when you feel like something's about to be done, something else happens, and that carries into the next part of the story. Something else happens, and it really carries the story well. For 10 parts, it's enjoyable from start to finish. The concept is really good, really developed, really, really well progressed, and really well looked into. And the final part with the Time Lords is great, and the departure for Jamie and Zoe is so emotional. It's because they don't completely forget. They go back to where they were with their one encounter, and they're always going to be wondering, who was the Doctor? What if we said yes? Why didn't we say yes? And that's so sad to think. That's just so sad to think. So for me, the War Games is a fantastic conclusion to the Patrick Troughton era, the 60s. It's just a top class story to wrap everything up, and everything in there is brilliant. So to summarise overall, as I said at the start, this season it's good. It's okay. It's not the best. It so far is the worst of the lot, but that's not saying it's terrible at all. It comes out for me at about a 6, so it's not very far from you, Christopher. There's some really good standout stories, but there's some ones that aren't the greatest. And I do feel like probably creatively they might have used up the most of their creativeness, you know, by season 5, and it comes to this point, and they've tried some new things. Some things did work, some things didn't work as much, but that's okay. That's what I love about the 60s. It's what me and George from Pickle Parker Reviews mentioned in the last review, is that the 60s were so creative and they created some fantastic things, and a lot of the best things from Doctor Who came from this era, and that's why it's so great. But yeah, season 6 overall decent, but not the best. So there you go, guys. That was our review of season 6 of classic Doctor Who. I'd like to say a nice big thank you to Christopher for being such a great guest. Thank you very much.
Oh, and thank you so much for having me on. I had a ton of fun talking about Patrick Troughton, and whenever you want to have me back on in the future, I'd be delighted to come back.
You know what? You are welcome anytime. You know, now we're into this podcast style. I could happily have 2 guests. You know, if there's any more you'd like to come on for, just give me a shout and I'll happily fit you in. Because we've now got that potential. We can actually have these open discussions like that. So guys, if you've not yet checked out Dallam's channel, go ahead and do that. It'll be in the description below. He's got some really good, really great reviews of classic Doctor Who, among other videos about Doctor Who in general. He is doing very, very similar to what we're doing now, just story by story. You are up to season 7? You've just done season 7, I believe. Is that right?
I just finished season 7. I just started season 8. The day we're recording this, my review of The Mind of Evil came out. So yeah, moving through the John Pertwee era.
So yeah, go definitely do that. Go check him out. Go subscribe for some fantastic Doctor Who videos. If you like this video, give it a nice big like. Put in the comments below what's your thoughts about season 6. Do you think it's a good season? Is it the best of the Troughton era? Where does it compare to the rest? Let us know down in the comments below. What's your favourite villain? What do you think of the Doctor? Just have a nice, great, friendly discussion down in those comments. But most importantly, guys, subscribe. At this moment of recording, I have no idea where we are in subscribers. So if you like what you see and you really enjoy these sort of things, come ahead and subscribe so you can see more of these fantastic videos. Well, there you go, guys. That was our review on season 6. Thank you so much for watching. We shall see you next time. See ya.